What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into the Fantasy Coaches Podcast. I am your host, as always, Coach Steve. On today's episode, guys, we are talking fantasy breakouts. So players who we believe that can take it to the next level in their fantasy game for us for 2022. Of course, we have our crew today, all in well goodness. Coach Jibbs, what's going on, brother?
Oh, sorry about that. My air conditioner was running, but like I was saying to John, pretty damn good Monday if you ask me. Nice, cool weather for the summer, so I can't ask for any more.
No, you can. It's definitely a pretty nice day in Jersey. I heard it's supposed to be humid tomorrow, but we'll talk about that tomorrow. Coach John, what's going on, brother?
Nothing much. Another beautiful day in Southwest Florida, and so I get to hang out and talk football. It's just a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Love it, love it, love it. So we're going to get right started today, guys. We have a lot to cover today. Like I said, we're talking fantasy breakouts. We're going to talk maybe some draft strategies at the end. You know, me, I think Coach John, maybe not Coach Jibbs, but we might talk about our Scott Fish Bowl before we get started as well today. But we do have some fantasy news to talk about. And of course, the biggest news as of last week was Baker Mayfield heading to the Carolina Panthers in that weirdly image picture that I have of him, but he's no longer a Cleveland Brown guys. Basically, they split his salary for this coming season, and if I'm not mistaken, it's a 5th round pick with a conditional, whatever. It turns into a 4th round pick if, obviously plays some sure enough games or whatever it may be. But Baker Mayfield is now a Carolina Panther. Coach John, how do you feel about this?
I mean, I like it. It was either here or Seattle were kind of the only two places Baker Mayfield really could find a home, in my opinion. So it made sense. I thought it was going to take for him to have to get cut and then sign somewhere. But the fact that they could work a deal and get a deal done means that Carolina really wanted him. And he's an upgrade over Sam Darnold. So you got to enjoy that for your DJ Moore, your Robbie Andersons of the world. And so I mean, he's not going to set the world on fire, in my opinion. This idea that Baker Mayfield's going to walk in and just light the board up is kind of crazy, but he is a little bit more of an upgrade than Sam Darnold. So I think it's good for all the pieces in Carolina.
Okay, Coach Jibbs, your takes.
I don't know why you got that little. He looks like he's about to rob a 7-Eleven in that photo, to be honest.
He does.
And to Coach John's point, like Robbie Anderson doesn't want him, so we'll get to that down the road. But I agree with John, correct, 100%, because like the fantasy options for the Carolina Panthers, I was kind of iffy on DJ Moore, even though he's a spectacular receiver that's been slept on for years to come. And then Christian McCaffrey obviously would do work by himself, but Baker Mayfield would, as a quarterback for the team right now, obviously is way better than Sam Darnold, way better than, I forget the quarter, Matt Corral or whoever else they have down there. So I think it ain't going to be pretty, but I think they're going to get something done down there. Mm-hmm. And that's tough division.
Do you guys think that DJ Moore can finish as a top 15 wide receiver now for sure with a guy like Baker, or is it just not that much of an upgrade overall?
I think he could do it. I mean, I think there's going to be more. There's going to be more touchdowns. DJ Moore's problem has never been receptions and yards. It's always been touchdowns. And I think Baker Mayfield provides some more touchdowns than Sam Darnold does. So, I think he could easily creep into that top 15. It'll be hard because there's so much talent at the wide receiver position. But, if he falls into 4 or 5 touchdowns, he pencil him in for 1,100, 1,200 yards and 80 receptions. So, I think that could probably be top 15 numbers.
I think so.
Now, like in terms of let's say Dynasty right now, we obviously know Baker's on a new team. So there's that fresh ideas like, well, he has another opportunity here, but he still has to compete for the starting job that we don't know what the future is hold. Is this a time to just sell Baker off for maybe some, it depends on your Dynasty league for what this trade has done for his value, or would you rather just hold on and just see whatever happens with him?
Ooh, that's a $1 million question. What to do with Baker Mayfield in Dynasty? And so I'm actively moving him because I don't think Baker Mayfield is going to all of a sudden level up to this. You have to start him top 10 quarterback where all of a sudden he's you're a shame if you don't have him on your franchise. So I think he's just the same guy that he was before. He's, middle bottom pack of quarterbacks. And so if you can get anything for him for fantasy pick wise, I would certainly do that and let him go. If you're in a super flex league, it makes it a little bit more difficult because he probably has a good year in him now, but I don't know, does Carolina extend him? Does he sign somewhere else next year? Like what happens with Baker Mayfield is like, who knows, but you got yourself a little window of opportunity to trade him away. I would take advantage of that.
Coach Gibbs?
I agree with selling him just because the point that it took him so long for him to find this trade. It took him literally 4 months. And even so, like Seattle didn't want him at the end. Half the teams didn't want him from the start because you saw them all get different quarterbacks. So maybe like a Colt situation or somewhere where there's an old quarterback arises. But I don't think Baker Mayfield's going to be coming with suitors anytime soon if he wants that contract extension.
Yeah, I think you guys pretty much said it all, to be honest there. I mean, it's good for the Panthers to have gotten a much better deal for a potential quarterback, unlike the Sam Darnold trade a couple years ago. Obviously, Baker was a former number 1 overall pick, so getting him for a 5th round, 4th round pick isn't a terrible deal. Obviously, we'll see what happens with DJ Moore. I don't know if he gets 6 touchdowns and does what he does. Yeah, it's definitely an increase, but don't expect the leap to being a top 5 or 8 or 10. I think wide receiver. I just don't think that's there with Baker overall. We're definitely gonna have to deal with some Jacoby Brissett in Cleveland maybe at some point this season. So the Cleveland side, we'll talk about once the Watson news finally comes out, whatever that may be. But good for Baker to get out of a situation that he just wasn't wanted in, and we will see in Dynasty. He's, like I said, like John said, I think the best. He's just a lower tier QB2, decent in Superflex if you need a guy, but not really one to really take it to the next level. So good for you, Baker. Hopefully it works out for you in Carolina. So before we get started today on the actual topic, just wanted to mention some Scott Fishbowl stuff on here. If you're playing, obviously today, it's been a lot of fun. I don't think my Twitter hasn't seen anything besides Scott Fish today. John, how's your team doing overall? I know we talked about it before, but let's bring in the audience here for this.
So I'm off to a good start. I drafted in the 104 spot. I took Lamar Jackson. I called my shot with Lamar. Kyler was still on the board. There was still it went Mahomes, Allen, Herbert. So those 3 were off, and then I had my pick of quarterbacks, and I really believe in Lamar. I believe in the rushing ability. I believe in his arm talent. So I went with Lamar over a lot of players. And then round 2, I came back around and Justin Jefferson, my wide receiver 1, was still sitting on the board. So, I don't mean to do a modified 0 RB, but that's where I'm headed right now. 3rd round, I just grabbed George Kittle. So
not a bad play whatsoever. Definitely like that so far. Jim, yeah. I wish I could ask you, brother, and maybe next year we'll have to get you in the Scott Fishbowl, brother.
Facts.
Yeah, next year. For me, guys, I have the 111 when the Game of Thrones themed league here, so it's a lot of fun talking Game of Thrones. I got Jalen Hurts, the 11th pick here. Thought it was a great play, especially for that rushing ability that he presents for sure. Come around in round 2, I got Cooper Kupp, who my number 1 wide receiver on the board currently, but I was a little upset that I wish I took the Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson stack, because the guy right after me at the pick 12 did take that. I'm like, ooh, I should have went that route. But in the 3rd round, I was able to go get Derrick Henry at that point, which I believe I feel really confident Derrick Henry is going to be great for this season here, at least this one more season. So with that points per carry bonus, I believe that is this year, it's going to be great for that potential opportunity. So we'll see how it goes. I like the 3rd round reversal. Hopefully it doesn't screw me up later in the draft, but I was definitely that hero RB way I love to go, and you won't see me taking a running back for quite a while, at least for now. So, nice. All right. So we're going to talk about some breakouts today, guys. So this will help if you're watching for your redraft leagues. Maybe you're watching because you're listening and learning about your Scott Fishbowl leagues to some extent, but some players who we might believe in a big breakout season, someone who's going to take that next step up. So, Coach John, you're going to be first up, my friend here. Who is your breakouts for 2022?
All right. Well, I'm going to start with, kind of the one that is almost, I feel like is cheating. I feel like is a little bit cheating because he kind of already had a mini breakout, and that's Cortland Sutton. I think Cortland Sutton at wide receiver 22 on the board of Fantasy Pros he's going to outperform that. And I always do my breakouts based off of, ADP and where they're at. And so wide receiver 22, to me, he's going to break that out and be in that top 15 going into next year. So not only is he going to break out and have a good season, but I think he'll retain his value next year as well. And we're going to talk about him as a top 15, top 12 guy. He's going to have huge weeks with Russell Wilson. He's going to have huge touchdown upside. We've seen him have big plays with guys like Drew Lock. So, of course, you get a major upgrade at a Hall of Fame level quarterback back there. So the run game is solid. The defense is solid. The weapons are great. He is going to be the 1A to Judy's 1B. So I love that, sort of X alpha receiver to me. And I like Jerry Judy too. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a good complementary piece. But if you're asking me who's really going to break out and retain their value, I think it's Cortland Sutton. And that's kind of the guy I'm targeting in that passing offense out as a whole.
I'm very intrigued by Cortland Sutton for sure this season. Coach Gibbs, how do you feel about Cortland Sutton? Do you believe in the breakout for him?
I believe in the breakout for him, and I also kind of do with Jerry Judy to a degree as well. So I'm kind of high on both receivers. If I don't get one, I'm definitely trying to eye the other one up. So I'm all board. I'm all on board with this new Denver Broncos regime.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued what happens there because I feel like this is a very interesting offense that there's so much like mystery and cloudiness to it because we just don't know who it's going to be at the end of the day. But we've seen Cortland Sutton, shine at times in his career. So now having a more capable quarterback who can throw the deep ball, we saw it with DK Metcalf plenty of times in Seattle. Cortland Sutton, he's got that big yards per reception kind of play to his game here. So I expect, like John just said, a pretty big breakout season for him. So I do love that one there, John. Who is your number 2 guy?
Number 2 guy that I find myself drafting all over the place. I find myself really believing in the breakout. And the more I do my research, the more I fall in love with it. And that's A.J. Dillon. I love A.J. Dillon. I love the talent of A.J. Dillon. They spent up and drafted him. When the Packers could have patched up a million other positions a year or two ago and they went running back. They saw what they needed. Aaron Jones is very good at a few things, but what he's lacking, I think A.J. Dillon makes up for. A.J. Dillon has some power. He has a little bit of sort of strength to his game. He can catch the ball. Don't let it fool you. Don't let those big quads fool you and think that he has bricks for hands. He has nice hands. He can catch the ball. And when teams lose their alpha receiver, we have noticed that the targets don't always get distributed to the wide receivers. They get distributed to usually the tight ends and the running backs until a wide receiver like a Christian Watson can emerge and build the trust with Aaron Rodgers. But Aaron Rodgers is there and he's a trust guy. He's a feel guy. It's going to be a lot of, screen game passes, a lot of short yardage passes to A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones. And I think that when they get down into the red and they get down into the scoring opportunities, it's going to be a lot of the run game as well. And A.J. Dillon's name is going to get called. And if he can get 50%, and I think this backfield is going to be closer to a 50-50 split than it ever has been in the past. And if you can get 50% of the work in that Green Bay backfield, I'm excited. I think that's really good. And then who knows the future in Dynasty, again, this breakout piece, who knows about the future of Aaron Jones? Aaron Jones's contract is coming up and he could be a free agent. And so, all of a sudden you have A.J. Dillon as the lead dog. And so that's a big piece of this too that I really enjoy. So I think you always want to get a good piece of an offense. You always want to get running backs on good offenses. They tend to break out. I think A.J. Dillon is a great running back on a good offense. So the chance for a breakout is there. Like all the fuel is there. All you need is the match, the ignition, which will be the regular season, and we'll hopefully see it.
Yeah, no, I'm jealous that you got to pick A.J. Dillon because I obviously had him on my list of different players that I was going to go with. No, it's fine. Thankfully, looks like Coach Gibbs as well. I had picked a bunch just in case because we obviously didn't talk about it before, which I like sometimes. So we got to see where we agree on there. But Gibbs, I assume you have that same player, so you agree in the breakout for A.J. Dillon.
Oh yeah, we were talking about him a couple of weeks ago. I agree wholeheartedly. I think he's going to make a big impact. He could do it as a receiver too, just just a little bit, not as much as Aaron Jones. So I think he's going to be relied on heavy, especially given the fact that Aaron Rodgers lost some weapons this offseason.
He reminds me so much of Derrick Henry to some extent. Obviously, just that running back who was really good in DeMarco Murray, who played decently well in Tennessee when he went over to Tennessee, and just Dillon just kind of buying his time the last 2 seasons now. I really believe that this season is going to have him be more of that actual like 1B 1A than maybe the backup that he kind of was more last year to some extent. I really believe they're going to use both these guys to that level that we really want this coming season for AJ Dillon. He's somebody who I'm getting like a guy in the first, second round, waiting until round 7, 8 to get AJ Dillon as my RB2 because he's just going to feel like have that season where he's just the touchdowns I think are going to be there. And I think he's low key very good at receiving his catching ability. They don't really see that there because Aaron Jones is so good at it that AJ Dillon is actually really good at it. If you watch him on film, it's fun to watch, but John, I can't disagree with this one again, man. This was another nail out of the park here kind of pick.
Also, like, take it to your point, Steve. If you get AJ Dillon round 7, you can have your whole team established and just kind of say, hey, Dillon, just give me 12 PPR points a week, and then I think the rest of my team could get the job done. Like, I know it's not going to be like good for your running back depth, which obviously is a concern, but still, I think that's a good way to strategize early on.
Yeah, he's a good 0 RB strategy if you want to take that route. I take that route very often in Dynasty, and I think a lot of my Dynasty teams might have AJ Dillon as my RB1, but I'll sacrifice that position there for just the way the injury history and the longevity that is not there for that position. So, do we have another one there, John?
Sure. I'll give you guys a bonus one. The bonus one I have is Chris Olave. I mean, I've talked about him on multiple shows now at this point. I love Chris Olave. I'm scooping him up everywhere and anywhere I can. Any format, redraft, dynasty, best ball, all this. Like, Chris Olave to me is someone for 2 reasons. One, he's got the draft capital. He's got this elite route running ability, this elite speed. He's, to me, he was one of the more out of the box, ready to go wide receivers in the NFL. And he's got no real downfield threats to fight him in targets. It's really Jarvis Landry, who's short yardage slot guy, and Michael Thomas, who is a short yardage slant guy. So, I think all those deep shots that Jameis Winston likes to take and is going to take because that's who he is. He's the same player he's been for his whole career. He's going to take those shots, and it's going to be to Chris Olave. And so I think Olave has the talent and the skill to really capitalize on this and be, a weapon in this offense that it might be kind of dicey the first year, might be shaky, there'll be some weeks where he disappears, but then there'll be some big spike weeks. But then going forward, he's going to break out and be sort of the guy that you want to have in I almost said Carolina, in New Orleans. And he's going to be that piece that, you're going to start drafting, where he's going now. He's never going to go this low again in dynasty startups, in rookie drafts, in any of this. He's never going to go this low again, in my opinion.
All right. I like it. The rookie pick there. Kyle, what's going on, bro? Thanks for watching in. Jibs, how do you feel about the Saints rookie wide receiver here?
For me, I'm never really a believer in wide receivers, especially rookie wide receivers, so I can't get on board. But for a dynasty perspective, I'm 100% agreeing with John. I think like he has a lot of room to grow in the Saints young core, and they have established veterans there too. So I don't think it's going to be like that big of a. He's not going to have that hard for him to get open deep, and hopefully Michael Thomas returns, and then like that offense could be like high octane. So like I don't think, to John's point, like he could be a good redraft player too, but I don't think it's going to happen first like half of the season.
Yeah, see, I like it, but I'm still torn on him for this coming season because there's a scenario where Michael Thomas plays and he gets back to somewhat of his form that we've seen obviously over 2 years ago. Alvin Kamara maybe doesn't get suspended, and I just don't know how this offense is going to operate overall. So seeing Chris Olave break out seems a bit far-fetched. But then on the other side of things, we don't know what Michael Thomas is going to do. Is he ever really going to come back and play to the level that we saw? Is Alvin Kamara going to be suspended half the season, which the more rumors I keep hearing is that it's not looking great at times, that he could get suspended during the actual season, which would be insane. But if that's the case there, I mean, Jarvis Landry is a bit past his overall prime. That leaves Chris Olave with an opportunity to really take these targets and be the number one in this offense easily. So I'm torn on it. I really want to know how this offense comes together late August. But right now, in like your Scott Fishbowl drafts, taking Chris Olave could end up paying off in the long run because that potential is there. So I do like it in some extent, John, but I'm still torn on the situation.
No, which is totally fair. And it's totally fair. And I get it that, it's nerve wracking, especially in a redraft format, to sort of tie your wagon to a rookie wide receiver. I'm not going to sit here and say this Chris Olave is Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase, but at some point these rookies do hit and they will pan out. And it's like, you want to be ahead of that. You don't want to be too late. You don't want to wait. And then and then again, like I said, Chris Olave's value will never be this low again. Cause I don't think it's only going to go up from here for this kid. So next year when you're in your redraft or your keeper league, or next year when you're doing a dynasty startup, and you look back and you're like, man, I could have had Olave in the 10th. I could have had Olave oh yeah, now he's going as a 5th round pick, So it'll be interesting. So I always think that's where the biggest sort of swing of dynasty variance is in wide receivers.
Right. No, definitely get that. All right. I think we are on to our next person here. I don't know where my thing went to. There it is. We are on to Coach Jibbs now. Coach Jibbs, who is your first breakout, my friend?
I didn't go. I guess I went with some young guys, but my first breakout for this year is going to be Tony Pollard. And we've been hearing news that Zeke's been feeling all healthy. He's looking great. His condition's all right. But I still make the case that Tony Pollard's going to break out in 2022 just because he's a great handcuff to Zeke. But we saw him get utilized a pretty good bit. Almost had 1,000 total yards, 719 rushing yards, and 337 receiving yards. So that's pretty good for multifaceted back that you could potentially get in the 6th to 7th round. So that's the kind of guy that you want to target in a 0 RB strategy. But Zeke had a 69% rush share, and then Pollard had a 30% rush share. I think he could creep closer. Maybe we'll see a 60-40, and you can see more rush attempts for Pollard. Obviously, you can see more receiving. He's no Mark Cooper left and all that good stuff. So they already been talking about Tony Pollard being more utilized as a receiver. So in half PPR and PPR leagues, I think this is a guy that you could kind of just bank on, and he could provide even more upside because Zeke's getting hurt. You're already seeing Zeke getting drafted in the 3rd round, which is mind-boggling because he's been a 1st round pick for 5 years, 6 years in a row. So there's something to be had there. So I think Tony Pollard, and he's also been getting utilized each and every year since he's been in the NFL. So he's just going up. Rush attempts have been going up. Targets each year has gone up. Receptions each year has gone up. His fantasy points per year has gone up about 40 points each year. So I'm going to trend with a guy like that, and that's why Tony Pollard's a guy I think who's going to have a 4th year breakout.
4th year breakout. Okay. Coach John, how do you feel about the 4th year breakout?
Listen, I love it. It's not often that this happens, but I think Tony Pollard is the perfect person to have it happen too. He has been on this kind of slow and steady rise in terms of this offense. It was, and it's taken him a while, but he's behind a lot of money and behind a big player in Ezekiel Elliott. So it's hard for the franchise to just all of a sudden start giving Pollard more. But he has earned all these touches. He has earned everything that he's gotten. The other great thing about Tony Pollard in terms of being a breakout, he's an unrestricted free agent next year. He could be a lead dog. He could be a 1A to someone's 1B next year. A team could really go out and sign him and make him thing. So if you want to cash in on the breakout now, and all of a sudden he's playing in, I can't even think, Seattle next year. He's playing somewhere else where there's a muck backfield and it's just messy. And he's, say Leonard Fournette's gone and he goes to Tampa, who knows? Anything could happen. But when you're an unrestricted free agent, that's also another way that your value can go way up. So it is this interesting thing where I believe in the talent. I believe in the player. But I also like the fact that at the end of this season, he could go find himself a real frontline job.
Right now, and for Dynasty, that definitely makes a ton of sense. I'm torn on Tony Pollard because I just don't know what the Cowboys offense really wants to do with that situation there. I feel like it will take more of a actual injury to Zeke for him to truly take that breakout. I mean, I see it there because he's obviously getting more and more work every single year. He's obviously being more efficient with his carries and catches every single year. But like last year, like the Zeke's injury last year, was that, that make him even better than what we expect him to be? I'm still kind of like torn on that situation there. Like I said, I haven't seen Tony Pollard too often really carry that full workload or be that elite guy. I've seen a guy like Alexander Madison do it a couple times here and there. Obviously, injuries come and go, but yeah, Jibs, I don't hate it, but I'm not 100% on board with you, brother.
Yeah, I'll take it.
What do you got for your second one here, my guy?
Oh, you're gonna be on board with this guy, Elijah Moore.
I am gonna be on
all right, so I already sold you on that. But you already know Elijah Moore. He had an interesting rookie campaign. He had endured a rough slate dealing with rookie quarterbacks. Obviously, him being a rookie wide receiver, so he has to get time to gel and mesh in the NFL. But then after that bye week, we saw him just go on like a scorched campaign. Like he had out of that 6-game set, he had 5 games where he scored double-digit PPR points, 3 games where he scored over 20 fantasy points per game. So I think, and obviously he lost his season when he went on COVID, and then he also had a quad injury, so he didn't really come back. But I think even with that little small sample size last year, I think him, Zach Wilson, he also has new buddies with Garrett Wilson and Brees Hall in the offense. So the attention's not going to be all on him. So I think they're going to use him in various ways, and I think he's set up for success this year in year 2 because the lackluster veterans around that wide receiver core, get him out of town because the new boys are on the block now.
New boys are on the block. All right, Coach John, how do you feel about Elijah Moore?
I like it. I want to believe, again, this is all just comes down to Zach Wilson. If Zach Wilson can take that step forward and support all these pieces, all the pieces there are there. I mean, listen, Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall, Elijah Moore, we've talked about, the corpse of Corey Davis is still hanging around there. So, I mean, this wide receiver core could be really good. My question mark with the breakout is Zach Wilson. Can Zach Wilson figure out his accuracy issues and figure out, sort of some of the problems that plagued him his rookie year? All the reports coming out of camp seem good. He's playing with some confidence. The team likes what they're seeing. So I have to buy in for now. I have to buy in. And I can't believe what am I going on, like year 5 of buying into the Jets breaking out? But I think this is it. I really do. I think all the pieces and the stars have aligned. The Jets are going to be a good offense, and Elijah Moore is going to be a big benefactor of that. He went on that where he's a top 10 guy for, like Jib said, for that 6-week stretch. And, maybe his ceiling isn't that anymore with Garrett Wilson there, but, he could still be, a top 24, a wide receiver 2 with some big weeks in him. And so that's great. That's a great breakout for someone who, once Garrett Wilson came to town, the shine kind of fell off for sure. And people are discounting Elijah Moore, but I'm not. I love Elijah Moore, and I love him in redraft too, because his values. I think he's going in like the 7th, 8th, 9th round. Like he's not a big investment, but he could pay off really well.
Right. Well, I mean, if Zach Wilson can continue to slay like he's slaying off the field, the sky could be the limit for Elijah Moore. I've been a big believer in Elijah Moore for sure. His ability on the field is very unmatched to a lot of defenders out there, and I think they can use Elijah Moore in many different ways. You have that San Francisco offense that kind of use their wide receivers in different ways, and I'm not saying he's going to be like a running back or anything, but end arounds, find ways to get the ball in his hands, and just let him do what he's able to do. And that kind of happened a lot last year in San Francisco. And if they have that same kind of mindset in New York, which I think they do to some extent, Elijah Moore could be in for a really good season. We all love Garrett Wilson, of course. He was one of the top players in this year's draft, but Elijah Moore's ability was just nuts. And these Ole Miss wide receivers continue to just thrive in the NFL with like DK and AJ Brown. So Kyle said, "Are you worried about the Jets wide receivers being too young for Zach Wilson?" You guys feel that? Because they are young. I mean, outside of Corey Davis, I mean, everyone. I think Corey Davis is the oldest at 26 or 27, and you have Braxton Berrios who's under 25, and then you have these two guys who are under 23 years old.
I like it. I think if you're if you're building a team, you have to eventually buy into a core and move forward with that core. And so they're really buying into the Zach Wilson, Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall, and Elijah Moore as their offensive core. And if these guys and the Jets are really buying into it, and I think that's a smart way to build a franchise. Am I worried that they're young? Yeah, it's I'd much rather have a bunch of veterans around to help a young quarterback. But I think if they can grow and together, it's just as helpful, because then they build all these sort of relationships and build this nuance of the game together that they have and connections that they have. Whereas it's nice if you have Devontae Adams and Cooper Kupp and all these, big names that nothing bad's going to happen. But that's also not fun for fantasy, because that's not where you find breakouts. You don't find breakouts in these veteran older guys. You find breakouts in the young guys.
Right. And as Kyle has had another comment, Jibs, maybe Corey Davis, the old one, is actually the top target. Do you believe that?
Oh, I never said Elijah Moore would be the top target, but I was just mentioning, like, to Garrett Wilson, like, he would probably be the third guy in the pecking order. So I'm saying Elijah Moore will definitely have significant snaps, but Corey Davis could be the guy who's getting the most yards by the end of the season. He's going probably like 150. You never know. Like, so like look out for that guy on your.
I will tell you right now. The Jets won't. The Jets don't want that to happen, because then they're not developing their young players. They will not build an offense where they're focused on Corey Davis, because Corey Davis is out the door next year. They don't care about Corey Davis. They would rather throw to Garrett Wilson, throw to Elijah Moore, and see what they get. And then Corey Davis is there. He's great. He's a good piece. He's going to help these young guys, progress and become pros. But they're not going to target Corey Davis 15 times a game. They're just not going to do it. It's just not. I don't see that happening. I really see their offense going to that youth movement with Brees Hall, Michael Carter is another name that we just keep forgetting. Michael Carter can pass catch. He's no slouch. And so, yeah, I think it's, if Corey Davis comes out and has 120 target season, I'll eat my hat, and I apologize to Corey Davis. But I just don't see that happening in any way, shape, or form. Sorry, Kyle. I just don't see it happening.
If Corey Davis plays more than 10 games, maybe that's happens, Kyle.
And I love Corey Davis. The fifth. What a man to be the fifth overall pick a couple of years, 5 years ago, and to have the career he's had, it's crazy. Small. He's the one that people point to and go, small school guys don't hit. They always go, well, look at Corey Davis. I'm like, well, you got me. I can't argue that.
Can't help it. His quarterback was Marcus Mariota. So it is what it is. Coach Jibs, you got one last one for us?
Maybe Alberto.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll go back to Denver. So, like, it doesn't really take much for a tight end to break out, because that position is a wasteland. But having good weapons around him, I know he's not going to be like a go-getter on his offense for targets and all that good stuff. But Russell Wilson, I know he's playing in a new offense, new everything. But, like, historically, the guy's relied on some tight ends. We've seen him with Jimmy Graham all those years, probably from like 2018 to 2022. Like, tight ends at least had like a 12% red zone share in his offenses. So I think he could rely on him. And plus, like, Albert O's only had 451 receiving yards total in his first 2 years. Last year, he had 330 receiving yards. I think he could easily top that this year. And he only had 2 touchdowns. So, like, it's not going to take much for Albert O to break out, but it's all looking good. So, like, if you're going to be one of those guys, like, for one of my strategies, I don't get any tight ends anymore in the middle round. So, like, I'm just going to, like, swing it late and miss it, and then I'm going to worry about it later in the season. I'm going to get me an Albert O later on. So.
All right. I like it. Coach John, is anything you want to mention on Alberto?
No, I like Alberto a lot. And like Jib said, it doesn't take much for a tight end to break out. And so my only fear is he really could be like the 4th, 5th option in that offense. So that makes me nervous. But if you were to tell me that a breakout for Alberto looks like 600 to 800 yards and 4 or 5 touchdowns, like, I could get behind that. I could believe that for Alberto. Right. Probably put him in that low tight end 1 range, which is fine.
Yeah, there's potential there for him for sure. It just depends on how Russell Wilson wants to divvy his targets up when he plays. It's just, I think that's what will come down to how the offense will go. But there's a ton of potential. I mean, I loved him coming out. I think he was one of my top think he's my second tight end after Cole Kmet a couple years ago. So he was someone I was very high on. So we'll see what happens. I do like that one a lot there, Jibs.
Yeah, I was just trying to change the names up. I could give you my Jibs' favorites for sure.
I love it. All right, so over to mine, guys. All right, so let's bring up the big board here again. Here. All right, so I'm going to name off two guys real quick because we've talked about them so much on our show that I don't feel like us talking about them again will change the mindset of anyone. So Gabriel Davis and Cole Kmet. If you haven't heard about these guys breaking out, you're not watching any fantasy football podcast, and you haven't been watching our podcast over the last 3 months, because these two guys are the child post or whatever it's called for breakout candidates for 2022. So I'm not going to talk about them, but they are my top breakout candidates for sure. So the guy I'm going to talk about here is Irv Smith Jr., Minnesota Vikings tight end. Irv Smith, last year didn't play, got injured out for the season before the season even began. They had to deal with, Tyler Conklin, who ended up playing pretty well and got himself a nice deal for the New York Jets. But going into the season now, the Vikings are going through a change on the offense here. The Mike Zimmer offense of run the ball and play good defense is not going to be what this team is going to do anymore. You bring in a young Kevin O'Connell from the, Sean McVay tree here, who they just love to throw the ball. We saw that last year. That's how they won the championship. Defense and throwing the ball a ton. And you have a quarterback in Kirk Cousins who we've known in his early days to be able to throw the ball over 600 times in any season. He did it 2 times in Washington. Last year, Matthew Stafford threw the ball 600 times in the regular season. So to me, you're hearing all the rumors. Justin Jefferson is saying this offense is going to be more modernized. And you have Justin Jefferson. Yes, he's going to be the top target. After that, I mean, you could make a case for anyone. Obviously, Adam Thielen has that chemistry with Kirk Cousins. You have KJ Osborne, who has that elite speed to go downfield. But Irv Smith is just a all-around kind of tight end who is just dominant. And, 80 to 90 targets aren't out of his range here. And he's going like tight end 18 off the board right now. You could probably get him with like literally your last 3 or 4 round picks if you wanted to. And if, Tyler Conklin can, get 500 yards and 4 touchdowns on 80 targets, Irv Smith is just a far better talent here and a far better athlete overall, that he could be a guy who kind of jumps into that low end tight end 1 situation and has that breakout season this year. So for my first one, it's Irv Smith Jr. How do you guys feel about Irv Smith?
Listen, I think this offense is so interesting to me. What the Vikings are going to look like and what the Vikings are going to do next year is one of the biggest storylines to me. Are they going to throw the ball 600 times? What are they going to do with Dalvin Cook? What are they going to do with Alexander Madison? How does Irv Smith fit into this puzzle? What happens with Adam Thielen during the season? Does he still have any juice left in the tank? Like all these questions that have to do. But the moral of the story is what they want to do and what it sounds like they want to do out of camp is throw the hell out of this ball. And like you said, after Justin Jefferson, it's open for targets. And Irv Smith is a very athletic tight end who can play the middle of the field and play in the slot and do great things. So I think that, if you're looking for a guy super late who could have himself, like you said, 80 targets, there's not many other names other than Irv Smith that I really look for as a late breakout tight end. And again, it wasn't long ago, if we remember, if we rewind our brains, that we were sitting here saying, why is Irv Smith not getting more targets behind Kyle Rudolph, behind some of these lesser names? Because he was a young, athletic freak of a tight end. And so now we know tight ends take a little bit while to mature, a little bit while longer to break out. This is prime time for him to break out. This is it. This is his year where I want to see that athleticism. I want to see some big plays. I want to see some touchdown upside. And I think it's there. But it's going to be interesting for sure because, we're so used to the Vikings being this slow, plodding offense, not this pass happy, fire the ball around offense. So it'll be interesting because our brains are just programmed to be like, nope, it's Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson and everyone else is secondary. Whereas I don't think that's probably the case next year.
Coach Shibbs, any comments?
I was all on board last year, and he suffered that injury. So, you could go look probably 70 episodes back, guys. Listen to my analysis on that because I thought that third-year breakout was coming before. So, I think there's going to be some variance in that offense with injuries. Cook's a guy who hasn't held up the whole season. We know Thielen's a guy who hasn't held up. So there's going to be opportunity for guys like KJ Osborne and Irv Smith to make dividends. And I think like the breakouts definitely warranted it because I was going to pick him as one of my guys as well today.
All right. I love it. Good first pick I made. All right. So this one might be a little more controversial. You guys might not agree with me completely, but to me, my second breakout for 2022 is Miles Sanders right now. Miles Sanders, yes, Jibs is excited. I know. Definitely would be great for the Eagles, but Miles Sanders is such an underrated player. I mean, he's a guy who's averaged 1,000 all-purpose yards combined in each of the 3 seasons. Not combined, in each of the 3 seasons on average. Which is wild, but no one really talks about Miles Sanders in that nature because he gets hurt often, which I get the point on that. That's a big key factor. But everyone's hyping up Rashad Penny this year to the fact that, like, oh, he's got to have a breakout, but, like, hey, he gets injured too. But why can't Miles Sanders do it? Miles Sanders actually has been on the field more often than that. He's someone who has been really good at times. He's someone who's averaged 5 yards per carry. And when he was playing on the field late last year, everyone's saying, well, Boston Scott got on the field. Well, Miles Sanders probably wasn't that healthy, and they obviously like to go with some kind of committee there, of course. But Miles Sanders still leads this committee, and he has that breakaway ability. He was top 10 in breakaway rate last year, that he could just take one to the house at any moment. And I think the way this Eagles offense is coming together this season with Jalen Hurts taking another step in his progression, you bring in A.J. Brown to the team, you have Devontae Smith, you have Dallas Goedert. This team is going to be scoring in a division that isn't very good overall. And I think Miles Sanders can take that next step. I mean, the 0 touchdowns last year, I don't expect it to happen again this year. I expect him to see somewhere close to 1,000 rushing yards and at least maybe 300 to 400 receiving yards and really take that next level in his game here that he's been kind of just flashed at times and over his 3-year career. And again, he's had 800 yards, 750 yards each season, but he hasn't played a full 17-game season. Imagine if he could get at least all 17 games instead of 12, 13, 12 games over his career so far. I think Miles Sanders has a big opportunity that you're getting in that 7 to 8 round range that could break out into a top, 15 running back. And I know it's hard to do that, but he has that kind of talent. It's just that the injury has been putting him down, but he can stay healthy this year with a good offense and a good line, he's going to take it to the next level.
Yeah, I listen. I love Miles Sanders, the talent. I think the world of him as a running back. My only fear is this. When they get down into that red zone, they get down into the 20, and they want to run the ball. It's a lot of Jalen Hurts that runs the ball in. And that's what makes me nervous. Is that those easy touchdowns that you want to give Miles Sanders aren't always there. So Miles Sanders has to have these long breakaway touchdowns for him to score. And it's like, that sucks. Whereas like, I like it when, I'm on the 5-yard line. I'm just going to hand the ball to my running back. It's just an easy touchdown. So I just don't think, I think that offense, because of Jalen Hurts and what he can do in those situations, in those tight yardage situations, it's, in first downs and things like that, he'll just take it himself. So other than that, everything else you said about Miles Sanders is spot on. The offense is going to be better. He's a 5-yard a carry guy, which you always love to see. He went on that stretch at the end of last season where he had, even with 0 touchdowns, he was still a top 20 guy with no touchdowns, which is so hard to do. If you're doing, 170 yards on the ground and you're not scoring, like that's crazy to me. Like, that's just so, it's nuts I agree that that's probably not going to happen again. He's going to have more touchdowns. My fear is he's never going to be that double-digit touchdown guy. The James Connors of the world that can fall into 15 touchdowns and not even try. So that's what makes me nervous about Miles Sanders. I just don't know if he will ever be that. But in terms of building a team with an RB2 with breakout potential, that's Miles Sanders is a great name. That's a great name.
Thank you, Coach Jibs.
I think it could happen, to be honest, but like obviously being a fan, like the whole thing is health. Like if he could play the games and kind of play through the games, because there's always times where he comes in and he's nicked up and he doesn't return, and then he's on the injury report, and then he's in and out and whatnot. So other than that, the offense is kind of catered to it, but like he does have a ceiling, like a glass ceiling to some extent. To John's point, like Jalen Hurts could snag some of those touchdowns away, which kind of ruins his upside when you have other running backs scoring double-digit touchdowns. Like he's gonna have to find like more production to match that. But I think right now he's probably like the mid RB 26 or 27. So there's room for him to climb, but availability is definitely going to be it for me. And I don't draft Eagles, so except the quarterback.
like a true fan.
I cannot do it. It drives me nuts.
I respect it. All right, guys. My final and last one here. You could call it a sleeper, but it's definitely a breakout because he's performed in the past. And that's the difference between a breakout and a sleeper. Someone who's actually performed that we've seen. And it's Christian Kirk from the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I've just recently come on the fact that I think Christian Kirk could end up having that breakout season. Let's start off with the fact that he was at one point the highest paid wide receiver in Jacksonville for a hot second there. And he goes to a Jacksonville team. Doug Peterson, over his time in Philly as the head coach, was basically a top 13 every single season, minus the one season when Carson went down. The very last season before he got fired, of course, was top 15 in pass attempts. You have Trevor Lawrence, who just was terrible last year. Terrible as first overall pick. But let's not forget, he was a former first overall pick. People pegged him as the next Andrew Luck, the next generational type talent. So that's his number one wide receiver. Marvin Jones, yeah, he's a great old veteran, but he's old. He's 33 years old now. You have Laquan Treadwell. You have Zay Jones they brought in, who, he had a nice little bounce back last year. They have Laviska Shenault, which I just doesn't fit in this offense, I think, overall, as a wide receiver personally. And then you have Christian Kirk, who actually had his best season of his career last year at 900 yards and 5 touchdowns. And you could say that's somewhat of a breakout season there, but I think there could be more out of him. And it's tough to say that because, people have always like, oh, Christian Kirk, like they kind of liked him, but then he always seems to like underperform each and every season. But in a new team here, new offense that paid him to be the wide receiver one, you have a really good quarterback who was really good in college and everyone seemed to love coming out, and a division that's not very good in Houston. Tennessee's decent. Indy's has a solid defense for the most part, but secondary could be worked on. There's potential for this offense, which is probably going to be bad, that they're going to need to throw the ball, or as a team, they're going to be bad, but they're going to have to throw the ball overall very often this year. And 130 targets isn't out of the range for him. And I think if he gets to that level this year, which I don't see why they can't, because they're going to have to throw the ball a ton this year, you're looking at possibly 1,100 yards, and maybe he gets the 5 or 6 touchdowns. Maybe he doesn't get that double-digit touchdowns, but that's a big difference than what he had of the last couple seasons here. There could be a big opportunity for him to break out that I think you're getting in round 9, 10, 11, that just no one is going to see coming this year.
That's such a fun one. That's a breakout. That's a sleeper breakout. Christian Kirk. That's a good one. And to be honest, your points are all there. Like he was paid to be that guy. Everyone believes in Trevor Lawrence. I was on here a couple episodes ago saying Trevor Lawrence is going to be a bounce back candidate. So I believe in that. And, maybe it's not, Christian Kirk doesn't break out into this usable piece for Jacksonville for the next 5 years, but next year, 1 year of Christian Kirk, there's no one else there who's going to compete with that. There's no one. So that you have at least 1 year of hyper productivity. And then if Jags decide to keep him and build around his offense, and he has a great year and he has 1,100 yards and 5 touchdowns, like you said, then yeah, I think it could be, wheels up, and then they build around him. But, right now they brought him in. They brought in a bunch of mismatch receivers just to try and see what they got, salvage this team a little bit, salvage the experiment that is Trevor Lawrence. And I think Christian Kirk's going to be a big piece of that bounce back. I love it. I think that's a good pick. But, my only hesitation is like, does he just is he a flash in the pan for a year or two, or does he really break out into? To me, he could break out into a legitimate player on a franchise, and the Jags say, "Yep, we got a guy," and then they don't have to worry about it. And so, that would be a huge breakout for him. But in 2022, 2023 season, like, there's no reason why he can't have at least 100 targets. There's no reason. Like, if you think they're going to throw the ball 500 times, 550 times, just do the math, break it out. There's just not enough people there to catch the ball. So Christian Kirk's going to see a lot of that action.
Thank you, Coach Gibbs.
Yeah, the math adds up, man. Like, I think he could be. If you think he's the top dog, I think he could get close to 120 targets. I think 100 is too low, to be honest. And with that, like the guy's never had over 1,000 yards receiving, so I think he can break out. Do I trust it? But for a guy going in, what would it be, round 9? It looks like pick a 101. I think there's a guy I could kind of rely on or kind of look forward to being like a wide receiver 3, 4 on my team, or wide receiver 3 flex option on my team for a weekly basis. Because I think like you guy could definitely get, I'll say 1,200 yards. Let's put it on it. What's John's bet?
1,200. Okay, so 1,200. I'm gonna say he breaks 1,000. He's a little over. I'm gonna say he goes 1,087 yards. I think is what he goes with.
Stevie Wonder.
I guess I think he gets like 90 receptions or so, gets up to almost 1,200 yards and like 6 touchdowns.
Yeah. Wow. All right.
Okay.
That's a breakout.
That's a breakout for me.
Yep.
Yeah, I wanted to go back and take a look at somebody in 2021. Oh, first 8 games here. Hold on. Just wanted to see somebody who finished the season as like wide receiver 14, 15. Yeah, Keenan Allen, perfect. Keenan Allen last year. What did Keenan Allen do last year?
6 touchdowns.
6 touchdowns, 100.
let me guess. 1,100 yards, 6 touchdowns,
and 1,100 yards.
Yes,
that's elite production right there. 100 receptions, 1,100 yards, and 6 touchdowns. That's what we consider elite production. Christian Kirk could pretty much get to that, maybe 10 receptions less, but he could get to that. That's the thing I'm talking about. And no one is questioning about Christian Kirk as a potential top end wide receiver 2. Maybe he doesn't hit the wide receiver 1. Maybe there's not enough targets and just enough talent to get there, but a high-end wide receiver 2 is definitely not out of the question if he can make that breakout season happen.
Yeah.
Sold.
I think the stink of Jacksonville is just turning people away, because I remember touting up, when we did the bounce back for T-Law and people were like, I don't know. I'm like, I get it. Jacksonville stinks as a franchise, and they're not. I get it. I totally get it. But the players that they have there are talented players. They're gonna figure it out. And so, I think that the Urban Meyer experiment really skewed people's view of Trevor Lawrence and what he can do. And I think Trevor Lawrence, if he bounces back, which I believe he will, Christian Kirk's gonna be the biggest benefactor of that.
Agreed. All right. So we have one quick last segment here. We're all eventually going to do this, but Coach John, you get first dibs. Just give us your overall redraft strategy for this season, what you like to do, whether it's wide receiver first early or running backs or whatever.
Yep. So I'm very big into the concept of hero RB, which I know a lot of people know zero RB and they know, robust RB, but there's this kind of style of hero RB where you take your first running back in the first round and then you don't worry about it again until like round 7, 8, 9. And you just go load up those wide receivers, load up, tight end, quarterback, all these other positions, and then hit your running back 2 in round 8, 9, and then kind of load up on these, kind of go shotgun approach at some of these other the Tyler Algiers of the world, I can't even think these other like lower end, Ramondre Stevensons, and you grab a cluster of these that sit on your bench because you have your 2, you have your stud in, hopefully you get a guy like an Austin Eckler, you get a stud, or you get a Christian McCaffrey, whoever at your RB1, and then you come back around and at your RB2, you get like you said, you come back with Miles Sanders, come back with someone I love is AJ Dillon, Rashad Penny is another one that you can, if you really want to play risky like I do, go with Rashad Penny and see what you got there. But that's how I tend to do it. And then just load up, because the talent at wide receiver is just, it tends to dry. There's a lot of it because a lot of teams throw the ball a lot. But after the talent pool dries out, then you're picking out of like the Braxton Berrioses of the world. And it's like, I'd rather take my shot on some backup running back at that point late in the draft, that if an injury happens, all of a sudden he moves into the starting lineup, versus a Braxton Berrios, which no matter what happens, I don't see a player like that ever really breaking out, So that's how I tend to do it. And that's the strategy I tend to do for redraft. I don't worry about quarterback so I'll do running back maybe wide receiver, running back in the first 2 rounds, and then wide receiver. You'll see me go on this crazy wide receiver run, fill out my wide receiver core. I want my flexes to be wide receivers because the flexes for ceiling and wide receivers give you the most ceiling. Wide receivers really, the KJ Osbornes of the world can have those spike weeks. The Gabe Davises of the world can have those spike weeks. It's hard for running backs to really put up 200 yards and 4 touchdowns. It's just, unless you're Derrick Henry, it's not going to happen. So, that's why I build my team that way, where my flex and my firepower is really in the wide receiver core. And then I just have running backs that I think will get me points and fill the need and give me a base, and the AJ Dillons that are fine. And I've actually found myself pretty in love with Kareem Hunt a lot too, as sort of a later guy to grab. So that's kind of my strategy, and be very active. My biggest advice, because you do not win your league at the draft, in the first couple weeks, be very active in the waiver wire. That's when you find guys like Elijah Mitchell who can win you a league. That's where you find guys like George Kittle was a few years ago, off the waiver wire. And so in the first few weeks, don't be afraid to blow your waiver budget. Just if you believe in a guy and in week 1 you see some talent, that's what you need to do, is say, you know what? Here it is. I'm buying into it. If you see like Cordero Patterson, if you bought into that mini breakout in week 1 in Cordero Patterson on the waiver wire, you had a top 10 running back the rest of the season. So, that's the other piece of advice to this strategy, is if you see a running back in week 1 or 2 really pop, attack it on the waiver wire.
All right. I love it. Definitely a fantastic strategy there for sure. I definitely I feel like mine mixing into that a little bit as well. So I do like that they are Locked On. But we are going to end the show today, guys. Here, we will have more draft strategies from me and Coach Jibbs on other episodes the rest of this year. So don't miss out on that. But again, as always, guys, please thank you guys so much for listening in today. As always, please go check out our website at www.thefantasycoaches.com. We got rankings. We have articles popping up from time to time. We have our podcast. We have the Dynasty Coaches up there. We have a bunch of statistical, in-depth playbook analysis that I am putting up there on the website. So I'd appreciate if you check that out. And as always, tune in on Twitter, at Coaches Fantasy for all of our updates with the offseason here. We're going to have our charity podathon. We're going to have some other our charity leagues that we're going to be posting out soon enough. So please check out for that on our Twitter page. Coach Jibbs, anything you'd like to say?
No. Draft wisely.
Draft wisely. Love that. Coach John?
Yeah, good luck to anyone in Scott Fish. Unless you're in my division, then I hope your team stinks.
Don't snipe.
Yes, everyone have a good time in the Scott Fish Bowl. It's for a good cause, and it's just a lot of fun. So thank you guys for listening. Tune in until next Monday. We'll be back again talking sleepers this time. Till then, guys, have a good one.